Hey guys, it's Matt Morozic, aka MVM3897 again, with another work in progress or tutorial on the what I am calling now the Xeku Zwei from everyone that's made a post on my YouTube video from the other night. That's what I'm going to call it. I don't know if it's right, but hey, it sounds good to me. So anyway, I wanted to show you guys the tools I use to clean up a resin kit and show you the steps I go through, and you know, this is the way I do stuff. It's not necessarily the right way. That's what I do. Seems to be working so far for me, and been getting good results. If anyone has any suggestions, let me know. First of all, the tools that I use, and you may choose to use something different, are pretty basic. Basically the same tools that I use for plastic kits, with the exception of one, really. And it's really pretty simple. But what I do, and I actually have two basic kits that I kind of just have put together. And because when I snap my plastic kits, I'm typically watching TV in the living room. So this is what I have put together. And it's just basically from a tackle box. And this has everything that I would need just to snap a plastic kit. I've got files up here. I've got sanding sticks. These are the foam guys that I was talking about that I don't use very much too often anymore. Once in a blue moon I'll use them, but not anymore. So I put my homemade sanding sticks in here. This is where I keep my X-Acto knife and blades, some mini screwdrivers. A lot of things need screws. Got my sprue cutters and just extra sandpaper and sanding sponges. I use these guys, and I have everything from microfine to fine. Anything coarser than that, it's not necessary. And then I've also have some like nail files and stuff in here that I use for other things. And then I have another little mini kit, and this is kind of like my pinning slash balls and beads kit. So I've got my pin vices in here. I've got some, this is like little bits and pieces of brass tubing. I typically buy it in like 3-foot lengths. Got some Sharpies in here. All sorts of little drill bits for doing balls and beads and stuff. Got these from Mecha Skunk. He's no longer open, unfortunately. I've got a set of chisels here, micro chisels. These come in handy when you want to scribe panel lines or just get resin sludge out of small areas. Blue tacky, I'll show you how I use that when I do pinning. And again, a bunch of different size drill bits. For most of my pinning, I'll use 1/16 brass rod. On some of the bigger kits like this one, I may go up to 3/32 just for the extra support, especially on areas like the legs and stuff where it's going to be bearing all the weight. So anyway, back to this guy. Here are all the parts to one of the legs. The legs are really simple. There's not a whole lot of parts, as you can tell. But I'm just going to go over real quick how I take flash off and pour marks. It's pretty simple. First thing you're going to need is a sprue cutter, and just like with a plastic kit, I'll start with this guy, the heel. You're going to come in and you're just going to cut this off as close as you can get to the resin kit, to the kit, without getting into the resin. And I just leave a little bit on there, just like that. And again, it's like plastic. If you take too much off, you just fill it with putty. Now the only tool that I don't use when I do plastic kits is a Sharpie, and I use a big fat one. Doesn't matter what color you use. But what I do is after I take my pour mark off, is I will color all the way around it. Don't be neat, just like this. And now what that's going to do is act as a guide, and I'll even do the adjacent edges, just like that. So now that that's all nice and messy, I'll take one of my flat files. This one actually is kind of an angled file, so I'm not going to use that one. Take one of my files, and I will go through, and I'm going to sand this pour mark until all of that Sharpie is gone. Once the Sharpie is gone, I know it's flat. So just like this, we're going there, and file that down. Now in these files, they leave pretty deep scratches. That's where our little handy homemade sanding sticks will come in play on the resin. Because what that will do is we'll get rid of all of the deep scratches left by the file. So you can see here that I'm getting close, but I still have a pretty sharp outline of where that pour mark was. And again, I haven't degreased these yet. That will get done after I do all this process. And since this whole area back here is flat, I'm going to just go ahead and go over the whole area. And so you can see that I still have some Sharpie there, so it's not perfectly flat. But my pour mark's gone now. You can see that there's no defined outline of it. So that's looking pretty good. There's still a little bit there. But what I'm going to do now is take my handy sanding stick that I made last night that I showed you guys. Right there. And I'm just going to go over it real just like this. And this comes handy. You have to turn it several times. And you'll notice, especially with anything 400 grit, it's pretty fine that it gets clogged a lot. You can wet sand this if you want. I don't do it because I don't like getting water everywhere. It will help with the sandpaper clogging. What you can do is, that's why I make so many of them, is as it gets clogged, I just kind of will rinse them out every once in a while in some water. So just kind of go over this guy, just like that. You see I still got a little bit of my Sharpie there. And just keep going over until it's gone. And then just on all the edges. And I'm running my fingers over the part too to see if there's any high areas or little drips of resin. Hoping you guys can see this in camera. So that looks pretty good. It feels real smooth. So that nub is gone. And what I'll do, there's a little bit there. Let me do a little more sanding real quick. And I'm just doing this off camera so I can do it quicker for you guys real quick. So after that's done, and I'm pretty happy with that the pour spout's gone, or the pour mark, I'll take a 3M. This one's been used quite a bit, so this is kind of rough. Super fine. I'm actually going to get a new one real quick. Because I like to start with a new sanding sponge on a new kit. And I buy these guys by the box. I think, I'll show you one. Yeah, 20 pads. So this is the super fine 20 pads to a box, and these will last you a while. They're not cheap. I think a box of these for 20, I want to say it's like $35 or something like that. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I bought them. So here's a brand new one. And I'm actually going to cut it up into smaller bits real quick, just so it's easier to work with. Using my hobby knife real quick. Like that. A little piece. And now the whole piece will get scuffed up with this. And this super fine, if you go to the 3M website, is equivalent to, and they give you a range because it's not these aren't like made to super tight specifications like your wet sanding paper is. They say the range on this I think is 400 to 600. So it's a pretty wide range, but that's fine because this is just to kind of get the initial roughness off the resin. And you will tell if you were to touch a piece of like a side that hasn't been sanded, like this side hasn't been scuffed up yet. I can tell that there's kind of a, I'm feeling two things. I'm feeling the mold release, which is kind of slippery, and I'm also just feeling a little bit of unevenness in the resin. As soon as I go over it, I'm not sanding a whole lot, just a little bit. As soon as I go and I just scuff it up a little bit, it's like baby smooth. So the whole piece will get this all the way around. Just a real quick light sanding. And when you're doing parts like these bevels, even with the sandpaper, be careful not to hit these edges too much because they will start to get rounded off. And there's a way to fix that, and I can show you that real quick, even though this edge is pretty good. If, for whatever reason, you have a piece, and I don't have a good example out here right now, but I'm sure I'll come across them later, where these bevels are kind of rounded off. It's a pretty simple trick. Again, using a Sharpie, I would just come in here and I would color the bevel, the whole bevel, and also going around the edges just a little bit. So now my Sharpie is going down the center of the bevel and on the other sides. And then what I would do is I would take a hobby knife, X-Acto knife. This blade's fairly new, it's not brand new, and I would just simply come along, and you can see as I scrape that the bevel is nice and even. And when you're done with this process, and you'll notice right here that I've got a couple pits. I'm not worried about that because honestly I can't see those. Those would be taken care of with the initial coat of primer. So when you're done with that process, what you end up with is a nice square bevel, and you will see where the edge is all the way around. So when you're done, you'll have a nice flat bevel just like that. So I didn't necessarily need to do that for this piece, but I just wanted to show you that because a lot of times I get a little overzealous with sanding, and sometimes the pore marks, like in the warp, sometimes they'll be right on the bevel, and there's, you know, by the time you're done filing it and sanding it, that bevel is all but gone. And I know Matt Tomzak on his Sazabi that he did, the 1/72 Sazabi, he had a bunch of bevels that needed to work, and actually on my kit I needed the same treatment. So this piece is done. He's ready for first round of primer. So I do that 324 more times. That was a very simple example. Another one. Let me see if I got something a little tougher. Not really. At least for this foot, they're all pretty simple. See if I can find. Oh, here's a good one. Okay, so with this part, this is the thigh. Again, we got the pore mark. So I'm just going to cut around it, get as close to the kit as I can. Because sanding resin is a very, very dusty process. Now, you probably can't see it, and you can see a little bit there. What I'm seeing right here is that right down the center, you can see the center where the molds were. So what I'm going to do there, I'm going to color around my pore mark again with my Sharpie, and I'm going to color all the way down the center of that mold line with my Sharpie. And that's going to give me a guide to let me know when it's gone. Because resin being this color, it's a little different on some of the other kits, like Neo Grade uses like a tan colored resin, so it's easier to see like the resin dust. But when you're using a resin this color, the dust looks the exact same color as the resin. It's not any light or anything. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the pore mark. And again, just using a flat file. And this being rounded, I don't want to flatten the top out, so I'm just kind of moving the piece around as I go, making sure not to get a flat spot. And once it's almost gone, then that's when I break out the 400 grit sand stick. And blow it off every once in a while. So that's pretty close right there. And now I'm going to bring up the 400 grit sand stick to get rid of the pore mark. Just like this. And the pore mark is pretty much gone. I do have a little pit right there. Again, that'll be taken care of with the primer later. And for this area right down the center here, I'm not going to use my sanding stick because with this being rounded right here, it's got a shape to it and it's also concave. I don't want to flatten that out. So instead of using my sanding sponge, which seems to get clogged up a little easier, I'm just going to use straight 400 grit sandpaper. And no stick or anything, but I can use my finger like this to get in the groove. And this mold mark is not that bad. It's just barely visible to the eye. So I'm just going over the whole piece like this. And you can see a couple